it is? Do you have any personal experience with the topic, either of your own or something that you heard from a friend of a friend of a friend? So, let's hear those. Tell us all about negligence. What do you know about it? What it is? How you define it? Any examples? Go. Start. Begin. Okay, yes.
Not doing due diligence. What's your basic responsibilities?
All right, not doing your due diligence, basic responsibilities, kind of being careless about it, right? What else? What else do we know about negligence?
Isn't there like 4 parts of it?
4 parts of it. So there are 4 elements to
Yeah,
negligence,
yeah.
right? Does anyone is familiar with those elements or some of them?
I know the first one, duty.
Duty, yeah, duty. So that goes back to what was already said, right? So kind of negligence will kind of be breaking that duty, right? Anyway, so that's kind of what we're gonna be talking about today. And let's get to it. So did you like that? The pigeons, kind of one asking the other one what words for negligence, and then neglect, carelessness, laxity, neglectness, oversight, failure, remiss, inattention, and heedlessness. Anyway, so negligence. It is an unintentional tort. As a result of negligence, usually we have somebody who gets injured, so injures a person, it damages their property, or it tarnishes their reputation. And negligence is also the most common lawsuit in sport and recreation. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of focus and spend so much time on it and pay a lot of attention to it, right? Because as we are getting ready to get our lives started in the field of sport management, in whatever capacity it is that we're going to, this is very important for us to be aware of, right? This part of the law, right? It's one of the aspects of it that we are going to encounter the most likely, right? Hopefully we won't, because we will be proactive. But if we happen to encounter it, then having this knowledge, again, like we were speaking last time we met, is going to help us deal with it more efficiently and effectively to our favor, right? So remember, the first one that I said is unintentional tort. So tort law, right, is what we're going to be talking about. So tort law is what? Civil or criminal? Civil, right? Is, we're talking about injuries or damaging property of somebody else or tarnishing the reputation. That goes to the civil system, right? To the civil law, right? There are 2 forms of negligence, and one of them comes from act of omission. The second one comes from acts of commission. Let's visit the first one, act of omission. What does that one mean?
Admitting that you knew that it was wrong.
Admitting is more omission, is omitting something. So it's kind of a failure to act. Does that make any sense? So it's, for instance, it's when you should have done something, but you didn't do it. And if we're going to put it in terms of sports, it's when you should have checked every single player's helmets, but you didn't. So you omitted that. It's an act of omission, right? And because your act of omission, you kind of, and then somebody gets hurt because of that, it's your act of omission, your negligent behavior that caused that issue, right? Somebody getting hurt, somebody getting a concussion, etc. So it's your act of omission that was the cause for the negligence. And then the second one is act of commission. What would that one mean? To you. Just standard, sort of. You'll be good for the next game.
Yeah.
All right. So it's just precaution. All right. Preventive. All right. So act act of commission, what are they? We now know what act of commission is. What about act of commission? Very important for us to know the distinction between these two forms of negligence. Act of omissions, we did something that we should have done something but we didn't. And then act of commission is we did something we shouldn't have done. So you see the difference there, right? So in this case, can anybody give me an example? I gave you an example of omission. Can anybody come up with an example of omission? Yes.
Like checking, and so the same thing, like if you check the player's helmet and you knew that it wasn't like certified the right way, you still let them play if they got injured. But you just
Yeah, you did something that you, all right.
Like what she's trying to say, right? Like, yeah, active omission is like you didn't check the helmet, and then something happened, but you did check the helmet and you knew it was wrong, but you didn't say anything. I guess it's still like a failure to act.
Yeah. Okay, so in this one, and this one is gonna be an extreme example, but if we're gonna keep it with the helmet, it's like you cut a little cord of the helmet, right? Or you snap something out of it, you know, like so that it wasn't safe. And, so you did something you shouldn't have done, right? So it's that, right? Does that make any sense? Right? All right. Let's take it to a different kind of. You are on the hallway of the, of the sport facility, and then you kind of spread all the water or the soap because you were supposed to mop it, but you didn't mop it. You just spread the water in the soap, right? And you didn't mop it, right? So if you were going to mop it, you shouldn't have spread all this water in the soap, right? So you did something that you shouldn't have done, right? You didn't finish the job, right? Right? Makes sense a little bit better?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because we can spend a little more time, because I do want you to get it. This is important because this is the building blocks, right? You have to understand this to understand what's coming in a few minutes, right? Make sense? Omission, commission.
Yeah.
So omission, you did something that you shouldn't have done. No, you did something, you should have done something but you didn't. And then on the other one, you did something that you shouldn't have. All right? All right. So like, what should I get from there? And eventually I'm gonna get all you guys' name. I didn't even print my roster today, but I eventually, when I start calling out your names, it'll get easier.
Right.
Great. Okay, so like Ray mentioned, negligence has 4 elements to it. Right? One important thing to note in this slide is that the 4 elements must be present for a case of negligence to stick. Alright? Absent one element and there is no case of negligence. All 4 must be present for a case to stick or to be heard in court. If one of them is missing, you have no case of negligence. So the first element is duty. The second element that must be present is breach of duty. The third one is causation or proximate cause. And then the fourth one is damage. All of them must be present. So the first one is duty of care, right? So there is an obligation to care for somebody, a responsibility somebody mentioned over here, to care for somebody, kind of be responsible for their safety, if you will. But the question is, how do we define the care owed to those around us? How do you know what care you owe to somebody who is under your responsibility, right? And to what degree that duty is owed, right? So to answer that question, we kind of ask another question. And the question that we ask to answer that first question is how a reasonable, prudent person with similar skills under similar circumstances would have reacted to the similar situation, right? And this is what the courts are going to do when they kind of get negligence cases, right? They are going to ask this question: what the reasonable prudent person, and the reasonable prudent person is kind of is an imaginary person, right? That we kind of ask what a reasonable prudent person would do with the same skill, knowledge, circumstances. How would they react and act in these same circumstances, right? It's kind of what would the general public would have done under the same circumstances with the same skills and all of that, right? And of course, to be able to answer the second question, we need to know all the details of the specific matter that we are dealing with, right? So we have to know the nature of the activity, the type of participants, the weather conditions, and everything else, right? So we need to know the specific details of that particular circumstance in order for us to kind of see to be able to answer what the reasonable prudent person would have done under those particular circumstances. Does that make any sense? All right. So that is very important when we talk about negligence cases. Okay. This reasonable prudent person standard is always going to be put, or question is always going to be asked in this case, right? Also, somebody with the same skill, knowledge, would have done under the same circumstance. Another another notion that people, the court, the judges, the jury are gonna be looking at is the notion of foreseeability, right? The foreseeability is that ability that somebody might have to kind of predict what will occur because of their actions or lack of action, right? So again, omission or commission. It's like if I do this, what's going to happen to these people that are under my responsibility, right? Again, like if you have the 12 to 14ers running those 6 laps around the football field on 110 degrees, right? What's going to happen to them, right? So, would have you been able to foresee what happened there, right? No conduct can be considered to be unreasonable if there is no foreseeable risk. What does that one mean? No conduct can be considered to be unreasonable when there is no foreseeable risk. Say that again?
It's always just gonna be a risk.
Okay, it's always going to be a risk, but there are instances, because here we're saying here that foreseeability is the ability to predict, to see what's going to happen with our actions and all that, right? But then there are cases in which we don't really have that option, if you will. There are certain activities that still have inherent risks, and we cannot really predict how this is going to play out, right? So if there's no really reasonable way of predicting or foreseeing that something might happen, then there is no really unreasonable running of the business. Does that make any sense? This is like when you actually predict, when you can predict, like my example of the kids running in that degree, in that weather, But let's say if it is only 1 lap and the weather is only 90 degrees, right? You cannot predict that under those circumstances. These 13 and 14 years old, one of them is going to have a heat stroke, right? I mean, 1 lap is different than 6 laps so it's not unreasonable for you to make somebody run 1 lap in 90 degree weather, right? Difference is if it is 20 degrees hotter and then the amount of running is longer, right? And you actually will have to think, hey, something might happen to these people, right? So in other words, what this one means is that the scope of liability is going to be determined by the ability or by the amount of foreseeability that the activity has, right? How likely are you to actually foresee risk in that activity, right? And again, we go back to the reasonable person, all right, to kind of answer those questions. somebody should have predicted that this would happen. Oh, well, nobody would have been able to see that coming, right? So it's those two sides of the aisle when we talk about foreseeability also, right? Most people would have seen it coming, most people wouldn't see it coming, so, and then we take it from there, right? Does that make any sense? Questions? All right. And then we have to, we're still talking about the first element, right? We already discussed, what was the first part of the duty that we discussed? What was it? What?
Obligation.
Obligation. And then the second one? Foreseeability, right? And now we're gonna talk about the origins of the duty, right? It has three primary origins. And the first one is that a special relationship must exist for that duty to exist. And can you think of an example of a special relationship in which one party has that duty owed to the other party? Can you think of a relationship inherent to the situation in which one party owes duty to the other party?
What about like a personal trainer? Personal trainer to the person they are training. So it'll be like coach to athlete, right? We have teacher to student, that type of idea, right? In those inherent relationships, there is that duty from the person in charge, if you will, with the person that is under their responsibility. Usually in sports, it's the coach and the athlete, personal trainer, the person being trained. You had that duty, you form that duty with that person, right? Not to do harm, like I was talking about the coach making the kids run under that hot weather. It's your duty to care for them, right? So that is a little bit reckless. It's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? Because you owe the duty to kind of keep them protected, right? And that's kind of putting them in some sort of a risk, right? You are not supposed to do that. The second origin is a voluntary assumption of the duty. What does that one mean? Do you have any examples of it?
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan. So that would be, can you kind of elaborate?
Like if you see someone drowning and you decide to go save them, then you have to finish saving them.
Yeah. Everybody hear that? So it's kind of when a passerby, decides to help somebody who is in distress or whatnot, right? As we're gonna see later, there are laws, Good Samaritan laws. That's actually what they're called, in which the person who comes to the aid of a person in distress or that needs some sort of a medical attention is usually granted immunity. Usually has immunity against litigation, right? However, we do see cases in which people. The reason is because we have seen too many cases in which people come out of the goodness of their heart to the aid of people that are in distress or in need of medical assistance. They help them, and then because of something that may not go always perfect, the good person, the good Samaritan person, the person that went and helped, gets sued, right? So an example that I have is, and this is real, this one person was choking. Somebody saw him, struggling in distress, having a hard time breathing. The person came, kind of helped him with the hand maneuver, maybe did some of those chest press and all of that. The ambulance came, took the person to the hospital, saved their lives, pretty much said that thing to the quick action of this person who had been doing some sort of a CPR on them, is that they were alive. But in the process of helping them, I think that a couple of ribs were, broken or fractured, or, of this. Well, when the person gets out of the hospital, the person files a lawsuit against the person who helped them. And this is real. I mean, this is not that I'm making up. This happens, right? So as you can see, that will deter people from helping people, right? So that's why we have this Good Samaritan law. Now, when we talk about duty and how it is actually a primary origin of this notion of negligence, it's because if you're helping somebody, then, and if something happened to those people while you're helping them, you're still gonna be
have to answer that reasonable third person question, right? So if you're helping somebody, you kind of, it's your duty to try to do your best, right? And let's say that you have paramedic training, or you're actually a physician, a doctor, and then, if something goes wrong with that person, then you're probably gonna be held to a higher standard of what you should have done and should have known than somebody with limited knowledge about medical assistance and medical medicine in general. Right? Does that make any sense? All right. So that's kind of why we have that here, because while we try to protect the Good Samaritans, we still kind of when all is settled, we still want to see how much knowledge you had about that, and did you perform to actual ability to do so. Does that make any sense? All right. So that's why it's there. And then the third origin is the one of mandated by statute. What does that one mean? And do you have an example of it? No, rhetorical. Mandated by statute is the third and final primary origin of duty.
Bless you. Bless you.
So it's a statute. It's a law, right? It's a law. So mandated means that it is required by law, pretty much, right? So it's required by law. And an example would be when we have like high school or any other football games, college games, or even professional games, where the law requires that it either in the vicinity of the stadium or within the field in the stadium that we have an ambulance in there, right? Just in case of a medical emergency, right? So that's actually mandated by law. It's a statute, right? So again, that relationship would be there. That duty would be there. Those medical personnel that are there, even if they are mandated by the law, required by the law to be there, they have that duty of care with any potential patient, any potential person that might suffer an injury during the game, right? And it can be either a player, a coach, or a fan, right? An spectator, right? So those are the three origins of duty. Questions, comments, concerns so far about the first element of negligence. All right, so one more thing that we need to discuss about the first element of negligence, which is duty. We want to kind of figure out the nature of the duty, right? So we have already understood that this duty is there are certain relationships, it's inherent based on certain relationships. It's got three origins to it. Now, we have this other side of duty that tells us that different individuals under our responsibility are going to be owed a different degree of duty. Did that just make sense, what I just said? All right. So by that mean is that if I am the sport manager of an organization, or the manager, or the trainer, or whatever it is that you want to be, and then I have three different people, I can have three different people in my facility, and yet I still owe different amounts of duty or degrees of duty to each one of them. Does that make any sense? All right, and so here we're going to figure out why. Because the duty that we owe to a person is determined by the status that they have in our facility, in our presence, in our responsibility. All right? So the first ones are called the invitees, right? And invitees are those persons that are there in our facility, on our program, with our permission, and they bring in what is called a pecuniary benefit. And pecuniary benefit just means economic benefit. In other words, they are paid to be there, right? They are paying the membership, they are paying for the section, they are paying for the lesson, they are paying for the class, they are paying their ticket to see to watch our game, etc., right? So the duty of care that we owe to those people is the highest, right? So we owe the duty to refrain from mere negligence, and the highest meaning that we have to inspect the premises for hidden dangers, right? For any defects, and we have to repair it, right? Make sure that it is absolutely safe. So we actually have to go above and beyond, looking for hidden dangers, behind the counters, under the chairs, for loose electrical, cables that may be loose, or for floor that may just kind of give way. We have to actually actively go and look for those dangers. That's kind of the type of duty that we owe to the invitees, highest degree, right? We gotta make sure that their safety is really reasonable. Then the second category, the second status, is that of licensee, right? And the licensee is there in our facility with our permission, but they are not bringing in economic benefit, right? So we allow them to be there, but we are not benefiting economically from their presence, right? So the duty that we owe to this category is a little bit lesser than the first, right? So here we have to kind of refrain from reckless misconduct, and what that means is that we alert of dangers that are, probably that can be seen. We can say, hey, be careful with the outside. It's kind of a little bit wet. We haven't got into it. We have some weather damage over there. We don't have to go out of our way kind of looking for hidden dangers, right? We just kind of alerting. Tell them, hey, be careful while you are here, kind of like this, right? Make sure that you are aware, all right? So as you can see, it's a little bit lesser than with the invitee. And then we have the trespasser, right? It's, that's self-explanatory. We know that trespassing means somebody who's there without our permission, right? That's what they did. They just came in without being invited, without asking permission to do so, right? So you really don't have duty towards these people. There is an exception, which is called the attractive nuance doctrine, and then in the next slide I'm going to explain that. So that's one of the exceptions of a trespasser, right? So you have no duty to them. One of the reasons is because you have no reason to expect them in your property or in your premises, so you have no duty to them. However, you also have to refrain from going out of your way to harm them. Does that make any sense? So that one is tricky a little bit, right? The trespass, you can obviously go in, either tell them, hey, get out, I call the authorities, something like that. But you cannot just, your first reaction cannot be, unless you're actually threatened, to either let those 3 or 4 really vicious guard dogs to kind of maul the person or shoot it on side, things like that, right? I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but for the most part, you shouldn't kind of go out of your way to harm. That's pretty much the only thing, right? Other than that, you don't owe them any, you don't have any duty towards them, right? So let's go back. So now we know that the trespasser has no permission, no duty owed, except if attractive nuance. What does that one mean? I thought that this was going to be like a two-way street conversation. You guys talk, I talk, and then we'll, agree. Anyway. What do you think that one means? Attractive nuance?
Would it be like, you set something up that looks like a kid might want to play on it?
That is actually it. That is exactly it. And it's usually for minors. It's actually only for minors. So this attractive nuance doctrine only applies for minors, for little kids. Attractive nuance doctrine pretty much says that a minor becomes invitee from trespasser, and it's exactly because, what's your name again?
Amy.
Because what Amy explained. The notion is that little kids are going to be attracted to playgrounds, and they are not mature enough to distinguish that they are trespassing on somebody else's property or on your property or in your private business, right? So just because of that alone, they become invitees, which, as you remember, is the highest degree, is the highest status, so you owe him that type of care as well. Right? Does that make any sense?
Bless you.
So if a kid jumps the fence to go play in the playground and gets hurt, you're still.
So you are responsible for that.
What if you have a sign put up that says "Don't jump the fence"?
The kid's still a minor and not young, and probably young enough, too young, not mature enough to kind of know the difference. So again, still irresponsibility. The ones that, so the sign will be good for adults, for people that are, and that kind of becomes tricky because, the minors, we had this age that you're a minor until you're 18, so, but the lowest side is that minors are protected. So yeah. So supervision will be key in that instance, pretty much. So that when somebody's jumping the fence, you kind of can say, yeah, we cannot do that. All right, so everybody understands these three categories. Invitee, licensee, trespasser, right? And the amount of duty that you owe. All right, so now you have an opportunity to tell me about it. You can kind of appear up, talk it a little bit over, for about 2 minutes, and then kind of figure out which one is which. Invitee, licensee, trespasser, whatnot.